We'll start with Ms. Mulhern and we will end with our virtual friend Zachary. Go last.
Leah Mulhern, present.
Ross Whiting, present.
Robin Murphy, present.
Dan Schultz, present.
Jenny Lohman, present.
Zachary Epps, virtually.
Feeling we
You
can
are
go-
muted.
No,
No,
I think,
you're not.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I think it's our sound issue because we didn't hear the recording in progress notification.
Yes, good point.
Ah.
We're gonna work on that, Mr.
Yes. But we saw you're here.
Yeah. He can hear us.
Thank
See
you.
you.
We've got lips. We are good to go. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Hey, can't hear you.
Second.
In the
Ms. Mulhern and Ms. Mullen, thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Feely and Mr. Taylor, who are here to discuss the drafting of the elementary school report cards. Dr. Feely, thank you so much for being here. Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for being here as well.
I'm going to quickly pass the baton, but before I do that, I just really want to go on record. First of all, acknowledging the work that a larger committee has done over the course of just 2 months' time. So it's been very intense, but it has involved multiple lenses and all grade levels. And frankly, it has been solely spearheaded by this remarkable principal whom I've had the gift of getting to know very quickly because of the report card. This has been a work in progress for a while, but just recently, Mr. Taylor was asked to spearhead it, and that he did. He engendered the support of about 24 different teachers and has created a video. When I said, could you make a video so that everybody could hear it and be on the same page as we roll it out at the principal level and share it with our colleagues, to listening to many different perspectives, whether that's the ed office team or another group of teachers or an expert such as Katie. And so the work that you're going to see tonight is really championed and led exclusively by Mr. Taylor, and I'm really, really grateful for that. I will tell you that it's a work in progress, so you're going to see it in a draft form. I know that some of you may have already picked up on a couple of changes that we invite you to share with us this evening. And we will absolutely be continuing this journey with our parents. We have a meeting that's established. You'll see that in the slideshow. And ultimately, there will be even further conversations. We'll take whatever they have to say, as well as taking it back to our teachers and changing it yet again. So it's not a final product. It is a draft. And we, again, want to thank Mr. Taylor for his leadership and initiative in this endeavor. So take it away, Jim.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Do we want to test to see if we can have if the microphone or the speakers are working before we continue? Mr. Epps, do you want to try to say hello and see if we can hear you?
Greetings.
Not yet. Still
No,
working.
not yet. Okay. Yes.
Gonna have to. Let's try again.
Greetings. I'm grateful for the presentation tonight. No?
Device level, like
It,
the
it,
panel over there.
it could be behind the wall, so maybe, I'm not sure. All right, Mr. Epps, try again, please.
Last time. There's no report card for this presentation.
Mr.
No.
Epps, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you all.
You can hear us. Okay, that's good. Okay. Mr. Schultz is trying something
I just
different.
turned the knob to the right.
Okay. Can you speak again, please?
Good evening. Good evening.
No, it's the right now.
Thanks for trying.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Oh, well.
All right.
Okay.
You know what, I wonder,
We're taking one last.
because this is gonna pick up there.
We'll let you. Thank you. All right, Mr. Taylor, take it away, please.
So like the speakers, the report card is a draft and a work in progress as we try to figure out the sound system tonight. So too do we try to figure out the elementary report card. But I do want to share with you what our best thinking is to date on that. So as always, we start with our vision and mission statement for the district, to which the report card strongly aligns. So I want to give you a little bit of a snapshot of the historical overview of sort of how we got to where we are today. I've been in the district for almost 20 years, and I have probably been on 3 or 4 incarnations of report cards. And we have made very, very small, slight tweaks to the current report card that you see your child's progress on now. This is a major overhaul because we have decided to align our report card to the PA Common Core standards. All of our neighboring districts are a little bit ahead of us on that work, but everything is happening in the right time and in the right season. So this is our season to begin to look at this sort of level 2 change, this sort of entire paradigm shift of how we're going to report progress to our various stakeholders. This has been a joint project through the CIPD, and I know how we are about acronyms and alphabet soup at these meetings. CIPD stands for our Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Development Committee. It is made up of both CEA members and administrators from all of our levels, including central office. We meet 4 or 5 times a year to discuss sort of major initiatives that we need to tackle and look at in a joint and cohesive way. So that's where this conversation started. At the February 2024 meeting, we had a conversation about the report card that it was about to be rolled out. And I made the mistake of asking a couple questions about that. And here we are. So I've learned to sort of try to stay quieter at meetings, and it's not always successful. We did have some educators sign up last summer who expressed an interest in being part of the report card committee. There was some, for a variety of reasons, that group did not meet. So I asked if we could reconstitute that group because there was already an interest there. We had 27 people say they would come from grades K to 4. I will pause and say our 5th and 6th grade building did a tremendous amount of work over the summer, last summer. So I do, and you'll see when I get to the thank you slide, want to recognize the work of Lisa Morgan and Andrew Smith, both colleagues of ours, teachers at EP, who really did a heavy lift for the 5th and 6th grade standards aligned. At the February 27th meeting, teachers were invited to get into grade groups, and we had great representation from across the district, from all of our buildings. And they were given a pack of standards for reading, language arts, and mathematics for their unique grade level. They were asked to look at those standards individually for 10 to 15 minutes, just to familiarize themselves with the standards. Some are more familiar than others. And the trick for them was that I wanted no cross conversation during that time, which when you get a group of educators together is never an easy ask. They were cooperative, they did that, they humored me, and then after they personally identified standards that they thought were important to be reported on a report card, then they had grade level collaborative conversations to be able to come to some consensus around, yeah, I think this is important for 2nd grade, or I think this is important for 4th grade. So what we started to do in those early conversations was have some horizontal alignment with the report card. what that conversation sparked was the need for ongoing conversation around common assessments, around a common grading rubric, around common resources, around curriculum mapping. I was not charged with any of those things. But I can
You never
say,
know.
but I can say those conversations are happening. And we'll touch some more on that. So the overarching goal of this piece of the project is to have alignment across our K-5 elementary strand, which, in my opinion, is lacking now, particularly in the way we report grades. So in one building, for example, a plus could mean one thing, and another building, a plus could mean something else. So we have some mobility in the district, so that when a child, say, transfers from Glenside to Wyncote, and they go from a plus to a minus or a minus to a plus, there's a lot of confusion with parents particularly around why my child's grades are so drastically different. So one of the things that we're hoping will emerge as a final product is some common language around how we're grading, what we're grading, and what the grades look like from K-5. It's important to note that the grade 6 report card will be aligned to the Cedar Brook report card. So when we begin to look at the models, various models that we're looking at district-wide about how we might reconfigure what our elementary and secondary schools look like, it makes sense from our perspective to align that 5th grade with the elementary report card and the 6th grade more with the secondary. Another essential piece of the report card is that they look somewhat uniform. So every report card, K-5, in reading will have a section of foundational skills, informational text, literature text, writing, and then the one that's often neglected that we forget about is that there are specific standards for speaking and listening. So we're going to bring that into the conversation with our grading practices. The indicators under those domains, broad domains, will look different from grade to grade. Foundational skills will be much more of a focus on a kindergarten report card than they would be necessarily on a 4th grade report card. In mathematics, the major domains are numbers and operations, algebraic concepts, geometry, measurement data, and probability. So every report card will have that domain highlighted, and then very specific standards under that. There was some conversation around, particularly under numbers and operations. There are many subdomains. So under numbers and operations, counting and cardinality is one subdomain. Base 10, operations with base 10, fractions. And we initially had broken that out by each reporting category, and it made sense to clean that up a little bit and put it all under the heading of numbers and operations. Social studies and science indicators are being brought over from the current report card in large measure because the science standards are still emerging. And we know as a fact that as much as we want this rollout to be flawless, it's not going to be. and that there are going to be tweaks along the way, particularly as we get clarity from the state around the steel standards. So we can look for that. Music, art, physical ed are already standards aligned, so they are not being changed. There's been passion on all sides around the standards around school success, classroom contributor, and how, from the teacher's perspective especially, how subjective all that is. So how am I saying, how do I measure Jim Taylor is kind in class? Well, he's really not, but I'm going to give a plus anyway. So his mother doesn't call me. But what we're going to do is really, this is an unfinished part. This is why it's a draft, to really look carefully at standards around social behavior, around social justice standards, which we in our vision and mission say is an important part of who we are as a Cheltenham school district. There's been conversation about digital citizenship. Do we want to have an indicator on the report card around some language around technology, uses devices appropriately? So if we're going to make it a standards-based report card, let's make it a fully standards-based report card. And that way, the reporting language will also be uniform. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So what was the process? Been a lot. We've had a lot of conversations starting in March with my elementary principal colleagues. We gave an update from the CIPD meeting about this is the direction we're going. What did they think about the process? And from that emerged this brilliant idea on Dr. Feely's part that perhaps a video should be presented. So some of you have had access to the video. If you haven't, it is embedded in the presentation. And if you're having trouble sleeping some night, click the video on and you'll just drift right off to dreamland with no problem at all. One of the reasons we were very intentional, and I created the video with Mrs. Clipsham, who is a third grade teacher at Myers, and she and I taught first grade together at Myers a million years ago. I'm the only one this age, she hasn't. Was to show two things. One, CEA and administration are aligned in this process. And I think that is a very strong message to have sent to all of our colleagues. The second reason was that we wanted everyone to hear the same message at the same time. So again, moving towards our desire for alignment. This was a way to model that. We provided regular updates to CIPD. We completed a first draft of report cards, which were then shared with every single teacher, K-5 in the district. So every teacher has had an opportunity to have their voice heard. We collected feedback on, thanks to Katie, on a Google form that they were able to submit, and we were able to sort of see what the commonality was, what the common issues were, both positive and what their concerns were moving forward. So that took place right after spring break. And I'm grateful to my elementary principals for, we only get 30 minutes a week with each team. And so for us to sacrifice that time was a big ask, was a very big ask. So I'm grateful that my colleagues saw the importance of that and were willing to give that time. We did provide, and I did provide an update on that with some of the feedback to the Office of Education last week. And then last Friday, thanks to Dr. Riley and Ms. Collins and Ms. Ferraro, we met again to look at what the feedback was and really honor the teacher voice, which was the horizontal alignment, but also begin to look at vertical alignment. So when we saw, for example, if we said at kindergarten that we thought place value concepts were important, and then we didn't address it again until third grade, that wasn't going to work. And we wanted to make sure, because place value is a standard all the way through. So we wanted to make sure, to use Ms. Collins' words, that there was a clear through line. We are still working on that, particularly with the ELA standards. That is more of a beast than the math standards were. And so we want to be intentional and purposeful in our conversation around ELA as we were in the math standards. Where are we going? Here we are tonight having this update for you. This will not be the last you hear from the report card committee, but it is an important step that you all know where we are in our thinking. Out of the March 22nd principal meeting came the request that we bring in our parent groups and have conversation with our parent groups, because this is going to dramatically impact them. They are going to have to understand the report card. They're going to have to understand the why behind what we're doing and the change. So on the 29th, UPG, representatives of UPG, representatives of SEEK, and representative of CAAA are going to meet at Wincote for a presentation very similar to this. And so that we can get their feedback and their input as well, and make sure that the voices of all our stakeholders are heard in the creation and eventual final draft of the report card. I also think it's important to reconvene that original group of 27 that I met with, and that Mrs. Clipsham and I met with in February. Because they were so passionate and so heavily invested in it. And there have been some tweaks since that original meeting. And I don't want them to come report card time in the fall, see a report card that is totally different in some ways from the report card and the ideas that they submitted. So I want to keep the communication and the dialogue open with our teachers as well. So hopefully in early May, we're going to be able to reconvene that group. I did talk with Mrs. Clipsham today. We're trying to narrow a date down. Grateful to Dr. Feely's office for finding some additional funding so we can pay our teachers to come to that, since it will be after hours. There was tremendous positivity about the new report card. And I want to strongly emphasize that folks are very excited about this change. And it's not too long ago that I was in the teacher's chair, and it's hard to get some teachers excited about change. This is a change that they are really genuinely excited about. With that said, there were some very common concerns that we heard from the feedback sessions. And again, I've highlighted them for you already, but it's worth repeating. The teachers are longing for a year-long document with a detailed pacing schedule. Check, not finalized, check, it's a work in progress. A need for common assessments. This is only going to work if we have these common assessments in place. Check, it's a work in progress. I think that's going to evolve over time. And then if we can get things ready in advance for the December report card, that'll buy us a little bit more time to get things on board and online for the March report card. So it will be happening in stages. The need for detailed rubrics. So it's all well and good if we have a common assessment, but we have to be able to analyze and look at that data through a common lens in order for it to be aligned, in order for it to be a meaningful report card. And then, of course, teachers are concerned about how is this going to be communicated with parents. So there's a process meeting in April. Back to school night, we have a captive audience. So that'll be an opportunity to say, this is coming along. We are in the process of talking with Heather Scriven, who's our Power School guru here in Cheltenham, who can do anything you want with Power School. She can do it. But what we're going to need is really a parent-friendly guide for how to access your child's report card directly from Power School. That is something that our secondary parents are very familiar with because they access Gradebook pretty regularly, some more so than others, but they know how to do it. Elementary, that is a new way, and it's a new way of communicating with our parents through Power School. The hope is that in having everything loaded through Power School, parents will now be able to download the report card themselves rather than the intermediate step of teachers downloading the report card, attaching it to an email, and then sending it out. So administration will be able to say, the report card window is now open. Please access your child's Power School account and be in touch with your child's teacher. And then call the principal if you still have a question. And we're really clear that it's important that communication come from the Office of Education and a letter be sent electronically at all the reporting periods, so December, March, and June next year, until we begin to develop this new rhythm and this new habit of checking Power School for those grades. This is just a sample and it's tiny, and I'm not asking you, even my Walmart readers don't capture it. I could still have trouble seeing it, but you can see the alignment with the domains in all the areas. Stay on point. One of the things that came out of the conversation was not every standard is addressed or taught every trimester. So for example, in kindergarten, as I know kindergarten, there's a standard around adding and subtracting to 10. We don't get to that until January. So the first report card, we need to be clear why there is an NA, why this, or if we choose to gray that box out. We need to be clear in our communication with families that it's simply because it hasn't been assessed or hasn't been taught yet. So that is a tweak that we're still thinking and working through. Again, citizenship and work ethics, we're working on that. There is plenty of conversation around comments. Does the report card stand on its own? Do teachers need to provide comments? If teachers need to provide comments, will there be a drop-down menu that we can pick from? Will there be the expectation that if there is a comment, it'll be a narrative? None of that's been figured out yet. I'll be honest with you. None of that. We'll get to it. I promise you we'll get to it. And one of the things we'll get to as well is sort of the proficiency levels and the language we use around that. What does a 4 mean? So that means the child is exceeding the standard. But we need to be clear in our understanding about what exceeding the standard looks like. And that has to be tied to a grading rubric of common data with common assessments. I see head nods, so that means I'm getting an amen, which is always a good thing. And then I think it's important that you know that this work aligns with the strategic plan. That we didn't just decide overnight to wake up and say, we need a standards-based report card. So definitely it aligns in a small way with the portrait of a graduate, because the standards indicate what we believe as a district a K-5 learner has mastered or should have mastered. So that helps us move along with what a portrait of a graduate would look like, this being the foundation. Of course, it's connected to teaching and learning. Of course, it's connected to social, emotional health, diversity, equity, and belonging and inclusion. I know full good and well that is a priority of our district. And it's one of the things we definitely pride ourselves on. Because this is a standards-based report card, we're not going to be able to alter or modify the language of the standard. That is driven by PDE. What we can do, though, is look at our common assessments and our common grading rubric to make sure that issues of diversity, so are the reading passages representative of a variety of cultures? Is it inclusive? We can look at our grading practice to make sure that it is aligned and fair and equitable. So that's how that pillar factors in. When we look at climate and culture, this is certainly something that's going to impact everybody, including our special education students. I'm glad Dr. Catcher-Bones here, because I don't know enough about it, but I can say that students in our special ed program will continue to get reporting on their very specific IEP goals at the same time as the report cards come out. So it's aligned 3 times a year. Parents will get both progress updates on the IEP goals as well as the standards for the grade level. And we're very intentional in our model of special education that our special education students, whether itinerant or supplemental students, students receiving itinerant or supplemental services, are included in the general ed classroom for a piece of on-level, grade level instruction in reading and math. Otherwise, the gap is just going to keep getting wider and wider and wider if we're not addressing that, and will always be backfilling. So it's aligned to that, and it's aligned to communications, because clearly we're going to need a communications office to help us push the information out about the parent guide for how to access PowerSchool, as well as working on with the Office of Education and probably me on drafting the letter that will go home to parents 3 times a year. I wasn't creative enough to figure out how it aligns to infrastructure, other than I know there's a facility study underway, and it will impact probably our K-5 buildings. So we want to make sure the report card aligns to whatever infrastructure is coming our way. So Mr. Epps, I'm including the quotation here. What can I say that I haven't said before? So I say it again. from our dear, great American poet, Mary Oliver. And there is no way to convey the depth of my gratitude for every person that has been part of this process. Dr. Scriven has been with me every step of this journey. We've talked about it. He and I have met 2 or 3 times about this. Dr. Feely is the newcomer to the game, but she jumped right in and has been overly accommodating of me and my requests and need for help, especially through her Office of Education, especially the 2 people sitting right here, Dr. Riley and Ms. Collins. They have worked tirelessly to support this process. The entire CIPD committee, again, this is a joint effort. It's not just administration. It's really bubbled up, to be honest with you, from the voice of the teacher. All my elementary principal colleagues, Ms. Ferraro has helped with the formatting. At the last minute, has made changes. Wait, no, I need this one more time. We know full good and well that this has not been looked over with a fine-tooth comb for typos, for punctuation errors. We will address that many times before we release it to the public because I am a stickler about that. Thank you to Mr. Kaufman, our communications director, for filming the video. And as I mentioned earlier, Ms. Morgan and Mr. Smith at EP for their work, Mrs. Clipsham and all of CEA leadership who have been part of this process, to all 30 of our report card committee members from across the district, most especially to every single one of our K-5 teachers who has had a voice in this process. That, you know, I'm a crier, so I'm not going to cry, but, you know, I'm not. That to me is one of the greatest things that's come out of this, is that everybody has felt part of the process. And that's why this initiative is going to be successful. And in advance, thank you to all our community stakeholders who will come on the 29th and who will open a new report card in December. And thank you to each one of you for the time you've given tonight and every Tuesday night, sometimes Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights.
And mornings.
And we'll, okay, all right, she has to get that in there. You hear that? Because we know none of this work would be possible without your support of our work. And we do all our work together on behalf of the children that we are fortunate enough to serve every single day. So thank you. That's all I have. And if you have questions, Dr. Teal would be glad to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for that presentation. At this time, we'll take questions from the board, questions and comments from the board.
So I would like to thank everyone for the work, the lift. We've been talking about report cards for a while. I am so very happy to see how inclusive this process is. Probably one of the most inclusive processes that I've seen since I've been on the board. And to have change management as a central part of doing this work and rolling it out is really, it goes a long way, as you indicated. I have 2 questions. The first one is, and it's not a question that you have to answer now, but just a thought about the possibility of the report card being translated into other language for parents who are not English speaking.
I know we have, I know you're not asking for an answer now, but I do know that we have that capability.
Perfect. The other question is, if comments are included in the report card, can teachers be prohibited from saying, Pamela is a good student, but she is very talkative in class?
So the comments are probably similar for those of you who have students in secondary. where we have Power School has a list of approved comments that we can only utilize. So it will be those same type of comments, because it's also new in this process that you will access report card via Power School.
Thank you. That's very good, because the good student part always missed my parents.
Wondering now if we had the same parent.
Like, I got an A. Someone was talking.
Thank you, but yes, we will definitely look into the translation.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you for the quick work that you have done, how extensive it is in such a short period of time. And that the alignment is probably the biggest advantage of doing this work. Like you said, so that folks can move from school to school if they have to or whatever, and still have a consistent rating of who they are and what they've done, so that they don't wind up being in a space of, but over there, so all of that is crystal clear moving forward. I think that's going to be fantastic. My other comments I will pass on to.
Yeah, please do.
I had typo comments and consistency and.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
My kind of comments, and so I will pass those on
Thank you,
to you.
thank you. Ms. Moore.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like not, thank you. And to the whole, I mean, again, I think Ms. Murphy is correct. This was a very tight timeline for this amount of work, and so that does not go unnoticed. Out of those 30 teachers that were part of the process, which that in and of itself, I was trying to quickly do the math, the percentage of our K-5 teachers that is, and it's a good chunk, which is amazing. I think that they were so invested in the work. Did we have, or did you have representation from special education teachers and specialists, not just your classroom teacher, if you will?
We had some special ed representation. We did not have any specialists, in large part because their reporting sections are already standards aligned.
That makes sense. Great, thank you. And my second question is, and this might be, Mr. Miller, what you were getting at a little bit. I pulled up my child's report card quickly to compare a little bit, some of the language. And maybe when you reference special education, so does that mean that right now, the current report card talks about on grade levels, or if they're being taught on grade level with support, all of those, so
Yes,
that would be
that
somewhere
language is
else?
going away.
Okay. And also the language about, I think there's a section for ELL learners on the report card as well. And that might be getting too in the weeds.
No,
so-
it's fine to get in those weeds.
Okay.
We need to
Okay.
be in those
Okay.
weeds to make sure we have all our bases covered. One of the areas that is not fully developed yet is what do we do with ELL?
Mhm.
What do we do with students who receive reading and math intervention? Currently, it is a drop-down menu of yes or no.
Mhm.
And then a separate comment sheet comes from the reading interventionist for the math interventionist. Which is a totally separate reporting category from a student with an IEP.
Okay.
Right? So that has not been worked out. That is on our radar.
I guess it would be especially curious, well, I mean, it sounds like
Keep going.
it's not done yet, but
Right.
just especially in terms of that, on the useful information that a parent or a guardian would get from that on grade level support, or, below, I don't wanna
No.
pull up that
it's
exact
all
language, just
Enriched
making
level,
sure
advanced.
extended, yeah, it's like extended on grade level with support, how they're being, because it does need to be captured somewhere so that the adult that is reading that report card, knows what
Like what the
they're looking
descriptors
at,
are.
because the grades or the score, whatever the terminology we're using, that is in there, well, you could look at your child's and say math, it says, you're getting adapted materials, with support, but the grades are still there. So if the grades are still there, but it doesn't tell you, am I getting? I'm over my words a little
I
bit.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
I guess I don't know where to capture that so that it,
we don't either.
okay, and then,
You're asking
Fair
if the
enough.
grade, if the grade
It's a third grade report card. Is that grade reflective of that standard as a third grade standard?
No, because so the proficiency levels, that's like the grade, so to speak. But if you have a child, you might have a child who's exceeding their standard, but they're not being taught at grade level standard. They may be being taught with adapted materials, so they're.
And that
exceeding,
would
like,
be,
that's
that
our-
would be reflected in the
in
IEP,
and the.
in the IEP.
Okay, because right now it's in both places and now it
Correct.
will only be, I totally
Correct.
understand that. I didn't mean to
That-
belabor.
Dr. Ketchum, that's my understanding
Yes.
of where we're
Okay.
moving.
Okay,
Part of it too, I think, is because, and I think this is a little illustration of that. We're having trouble articulating what all that means.
it's just not me then.
No, it's,
Okay.
it's not. And every reporting period, teachers come to, in my building, I'll only speak for my building, teachers come and say, what's OG again?
Okay.
How do we, what is that? What's adapted? What's not adapted? So it's just easier to say,
To remove it from
Remove
this
it.
area.
but with that said, we still need to be very clear. Very clear in our understanding of what does it mean for a child to exceed a standard?
Thank you.
What does that look like? I'm gonna stop there.
No, that's good, no, that helps. Thank
Okay,
you,
yeah.
appreciate it. And I wasn't expecting the full, just trying to understand a little bit.
Schultz. Thank you, plus one to everything that has been said around thanks, and love to see that it's moving and all of the folks who are involved. I want to start with it's gonna seem like an asinine question, but it's kind of a calibration question. What is the point of a report card? From administration's perspective, like what is this for? What are we trying to accomplish with the report card?
We've always done it. I think one of the major reasons is to provide clear communication to parents about how your child is performing academically in the classroom. Okay, that answered that.
I also think it's to measure student progress over time.
Got it.
And I think that is important in having this through line that Ms. Collins describes in the report card, so that you can see growth over time. So that if, again, back to place value, if place value is on the kindergarten report card and I'm a 1, but by the time I get to 3rd grade and place value concepts are there and I'm a 3 or a 4, a parent can follow that trajectory and say, oh, I see evidence of growth over time.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
And I also imagine that there are, and it wasn't a rhetorical question, because it's really, when we're thinking about revamping
Mhm.
something, I think it's helpful, for me personally, it's helpful to ground in like, what are we trying to accomplish with this?
Yeah.
The
revamp?
why,
What's
What's-
the why?
what's the
Yeah,
why, absolutely.
And I also want to just throw out, because my experience with report cards is, I guess it was as a kid long ago, but now it's as a parent. And so like what I get out of a report card is a tiny glimmer into the life of my kid 6, 7, 8 hours a day when she doesn't feel like talking about it with me. I can sort of hear from the narratives of what's going on when there is the comment section with some narrative. And it's like a touch point that I can talk to my child about and the like. Second calibration question is, how often should a report card be updated? So, I mean, this is the first time in quite some time that we've done a major revamp, but sort of in an ideal cycle, would we be having a less, maybe
Heavy lift.
less heavy lift, but maybe more regular lift? What's,
In my opinion, from previous work, that typically can be done when you have your curriculum renewal cycle. So a board adopts a curriculum renewal cycle. So when ELA is up for curriculum renewal, at that same time, you're looking at the report card, you're looking at the rubrics, you're looking at the scope and sequence and the assessment.
Okay.
So it could be done in that fashion.
that makes a lot of sense.
So part of our work moving forward is making sure that the policies that have been upgraded, adopted, approved, written by this board are really being implemented and actualized from an operational perspective in the school district. And you guys are gonna see as we move forward around that question and others, we should be able to do a crosswalk. And you should clearly be able to see the interconnectivity of how policy is driving our day-to-day work. That's going to be a work in progress. Just so you guys are aware of some next steps that we're taking as a team. And we just met as a full cabinet on Monday. We're going to be looking, and I know it seems like, wow, are we still talking about this? But we're going to be looking at the curriculum audit that was done back in 2017. Because there was a lot of rich information that now I have wonderings of how have we addressed a lot of those findings. And through addressing those findings, systems, structures, processes, like you mentioned, are going to be memorialized and part of our work. So great question, and a lot to be determined. As we move forward, but you will be seeing those connections for sure. And from this standpoint, it's just the fact that we weren't aligned to basic state standards.
Right.
Just to start. So
And I love that answer, and especially the idea that it becomes a more not living document, because I know it's a little more locked in for a slightly longer period of time than a true living document. But it doesn't have to be 1000% perfect for the next 20 years.
It's
from what's
fluid.
coming out, right? It's a dramatic improvement from what we have today. And so I'm gonna still ask some of my questions, but with the understanding that some of these things are maybe the next iteration we start thinking about. But and you had mentioned the science standards, and we're kind of waiting, we're in a holding formation a little bit insofar as the report card for what comes out of the state standards. Social studies, I'm curious if in lieu of a standard, if there is a way for us to find a standard, find something that could be a little more robust in the social studies department on the report card, if not today, some other time. Just because again, speaking as a parent, that it's not, I see that and I see, okay, that doesn't mean anything doesn't mean anything to be on the current report card, and it certainly.
So
one of the
don't even go there.
Yep.
So I want to shut down the line of question by saying this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not shutting it down, but please forward it. Curriculum schedule.
That has to do with curriculum.
Text, anything derived around what your questioning may be right now is all the work that we're going to be unpacking. And that's why I preface by saying what I said. And if you need me to push out that curriculum audit to all of you guys, I can do that. And Dr. Collins was kind enough to shoot out the Ed Affairs presentation that was done around the curriculum audit, which I responded to her, thank you, because it really helped synthesize what our baseline work needs to be based on all the recommendations and the findings. So what I'm saying is we have a lot of good things that are happening. We need to do a reset, and I've been doing a reset this year to get a baseline of what our current state is. So a lot of the things that you're asking are going to come out as we move through the work of doing this reset, of both qualitatively and quantitatively assessing our reality looking at our strategic plan, looking at our action plans, looking at the gaps as we gather and revisit information to be fluid in that driving what our path forward is going to look like. So, anything that you would be asking or anyone else from the board at this point in time would be premature. But I'm articulating at a high level so you understand that any of your questions will be in the near future unpacked.
Understood.
I hope that helps. Yes.
Real quick, when was the curriculum audit done? And that's for-
2017 is when the findings came.
And that's for the benefit of the newer board members who weren't here when that happened. So I think it would be a good thing to push it out so you will have an opportunity to read it and understand that that work is still relevant for what's happening, the work that's happening today. Okay.
Go ahead with your next question.
I do have one, and that I think this will probably be more along the lines of what's actually useful for this conversation, which is one, it would be great if we could figure out ways to measure who's access, like how effective the report card is in reaching families, and ideally in a disaggregated way. So I know that for things like the gifted
So
evaluation,
not reaching families per se,
Okay.
but how many families are actually utilizing or accessing the report
Correct.
card?
and I think that, okay, understood,
Reaching, that's not our job.
Right.
We're making it available.
right,
What you want to do is some data analytics around what are the number of touch points that Power School may be having around report card, right?
right. Yeah, essentially, are we making it available in a way that is actually accomplishing the goal
Right.
of it being available?
See, and that, so let me, I just want to push on that.
Sure.
That, when we make a statement, and because we're one team, that really speaks to culture and climate, right? And the culture and climate of our district. I think we do a great job of making things available.
Right.
I think it becomes part of how we message and how we leverage all of us as being leaders in the community of getting the word out there of what's available. I think it's going to speak to part of what I keep alluding to. And we just had our K through 12 principals meeting today, administrative meeting, central office. Everyone was in this room around Portrait of a Graduate, that blueprint, what that's going to do in terms of really looking at this K through 16. I'm gonna stop saying K through 12, K through 16 continuum, and then that parent university approach. All we can do is memorialize the how we're going about making it available. And I think we're all going to have a voice we're pushing out to our families that this is there, but it's up to them to use it.
Sure. Yeah, and I totally hear you. And some of where I'm coming from is as a programmer, as a system designer, I can make an interface that's easy to use, or I can make an interface that's harder to use. So to some extent, the system is a usability experience. And so that's all I was getting at with that, because I totally hear what you're saying.
But we don't design the system.
Right.
Power School is Power School.
Understood.
It's it really does come down to what is the culture and the climate. I feel we have a strong culture and climate in terms of parent involvement, parents wanting to be in tune. It's really how we message to your original question. What is the point of this report card? What is the benefit of accessing and understanding this knowledge of where your students are on their continuous journey, right? That, I think, to me, and giving them the tools and the wherewithal to know how to navigate, right? So how do we make them an effective user? But from the standpoint of the product, I don't know, Dr. Raleigh works for Lincoln quite a bit in terms of getting them insight. We haven't gotten there with Power School yet. That's a much larger beast. But these are conversations that we can have as we get closer to actually launching. Because messaging, we've already heard about that over and over, how we communicate, how we message. I think that's all needs to be a part and is aligned to some of the things that you're mentioning right now. being real intentional.
Sure.
And real strategic. And I think we need to chunk it. I think we need to make it small, to reach more individuals. So we gotta build that in. We can build that into our schedule. But we need to have PT for parents, just like we have.
Fair enough.
Right.
And I have one last one, which is, and this is, take it or leave it, but sort of non-standard reports. And to me, that's what the comments section was. I feel like as kids get older, they're more empowered to find and follow their own resources and passions. And when we're talking K-5, the more a parent understands what their kids' interests are, I think the more they can help support those kids in those interests. And so I wonder if there's any way for a report card to actually be a mechanism to have the teacher report back on what have they observed, are these the passions or interests, suggested enrichments, things along those lines. And I don't know if, I know historically it's probably not been what's in a report card, but again, to that, what is the point of a report card? Maybe there's room to think outside of the box at some point.
So as I'm hearing that, I'm pivoting and thinking about Ms. King, and really the role of our counselors, the role of Naviance, the role of some of the tools that we have in place that really kind of assess that, and building out potentially what does that look like? That's a standalone, but it's a tool that accesses exactly what you just referenced. So I think that's a parallel track that potentially we revisit.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Woman.
I hesitate to ask questions because I seem to always get people angry at me when I ask questions. But I'm gonna ask questions. I'm sorry. Thank you, first of all, for the presentation, Mr. Taylor. I really appreciate it. And indeed, yes, we have been discussing report cards, elementary school report cards for a long time. I dug out my daughter's third grade report card. None of the individuals listed on the front cover exist in this district anymore. Sad to say, but there we are. And because I actually hadn't seen an elementary school report card, that was the other thing. Would it be able? I know that they're all a little different depending on the buildings. I wasn't even sure what I was looking at here and how it was different from what currently exists.
We can certainly send you.
Yeah, yeah.
We can do that tomorrow.
Because it may be different, but I'm actually looking at this and I honestly don't think it's all that different. Yeah, it's really not. And so I applaud this project because there should have probably been some changes to our report cards from over the past 12 years. Yeah.
It has been longer than that.
Yeah.
I've been here almost.
Yeah. Okay, so that's right. Yeah, because what I appreciate on this is the vertical, I guess, standards alignment, as well as certainly the horizontal, but also the vertical, because that's the thing where, when you would look at your child report card from year to year, you'd be like, okay, it says here they've got an S. That's my other question on measurement. What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. It goes from year to year. And that's my other one question. Are we still using S's and grade? What are we using on our elementary school report cards right now?
The current report card?
Yeah.
Depends on the level. So our K-2 is plus S, S minus, and NI for needs improvement, or NA for not assessed. Our older grades, 3, 4, are grade aligned. Grades, A, B, C, D, E.
Okay, that is a little bit different because this is a third grade report card from 12 years ago, where that was S's. And this pluses.
So in fact, the subject has a grade, but all of the things underneath.
The indicators.
The
Indicators have.
You're right,
yes.
right. That's how it was.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. I see that now. Sorry. So I'm just even trying to understand where we are to where we're going now, because We'll
send out a current
Thank
one
you.
to the
That's
board
helpful.
tomorrow, so you
Yeah.
can have that.
just wasn't really even sure what we were comparing it to. The other thing is, just curious, I asked a question about a librarian in a previous meeting, and also wondering if where do the librarian input fit into here, because they should touch all subjects and all grades.
That was a conversation, and that is a conversation we're having. Historically, past practice has been that librarians never gave input on their report cards. So that will be a major paradigm shift for our librarians to align their use standards. And we need we would need to determine what those standards are.
And there are state standards.
There are state standards, correct.
Right.
Let me jump in. Go ahead, Ms. Collins.
So Mr. Taylor's being very kind. Because this was discussed at CIPD and a comment was made that it would be a change in work duties for those particular staff members. So therefore, where that may fall in terms of how we have to have the additional conversation with the teacher union leadership.
And that's interesting, because I'm coming at it from the angle that I would think they would want to be able to give input. I would assume that, but in any case, I just put that out there just because of the fact that they do touch so many kids through so many years.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So it was brought up, but still.
Yeah. And some librarians really know what's going on. Like, they know what's going on with a kid in some ways that other folks may not, so.
And at some level, that addresses Mr. Schultz's thing around passion and what do they read.
It does, yeah. So I just throw that out there. The other thing is, people already asked a bunch of my questions. Appreciate the translation. Oh, the only other thing, as someone who has experience with Power School, more recent experience with Power School, which I don't know if, I think it's gonna take a lot of lifting to get elementary school parents used to accessing Power School to get their kids' report cards, right? Because right now, we're still, I assume, getting like paper, no, you're not getting email. Okay, well, that's good, at least it's directly emailed. That's different than the high school.
Correct.
Yeah, which I am not frankly a huge fan of, even though I'm a parent of a kid who I don't need to look at his report card, I know he's doing well, it's fine. But like right now at the high school, what you get is a line in like a sentence that's of a whole other email that says, the second marking period, the second trimester's over. Go, I'm not even sure if it says go look at Power School to access your kid's report card. I think it might just say the second trimester is over. You know, it's a blue day tomorrow. You know, so I'm not sure like where that, I think what I'm trying to say is we're gonna have to be really, really intentional about rolling this out for K-5 parents, because honestly, I don't think we've ever done a very good job at all, if we've done any kind of job, with how it should be used with by high school parents. Like I honestly think, I mean, some people check it religiously. I think there's an app.
There's an app.
Yeah, there's an app that some people check all the time. Some people love that. And I think other people have no idea about the existence of the app, let alone what else you could find if you logged on a computer on Power School. So I think like we're gonna have to be really, really intentional about that. And that's a project for another day in terms of how we let like high school parents know how to use Power School, because the 4 years that I've been at the high school, nobody ever once told us how to use Power School. And we used it a little bit at Cedar Brook, and I guess they're doing it in Cedar Brook, yeah. And when when we were at Cedar Brook, no one ever told us how to. It was just like, here's your login, good luck. And I had to like email somebody once because I couldn't figure out how to log in. So like it's just, I think it's gonna be like a heavy lift is all I'm gonna say. And I think we're gonna need to do a good job of.
And I think that goes back to Dr. Scriven's earlier point of messaging, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we touch it, we'll touch the whole continuum.
Okay,
Like,
yeah,
it
I think
won't-
that is much needed.
Yeah, it won't just be.
Because the thing you never want to hear a parent say is, I didn't know,
Right.
right? Like
No,
that's
I
the
agree.
thing.
But
Yeah.
look, it goes to the point, even in resources in the high school, that students don't even know they have.
Well,
So
that's
there's no one, we're not in denial
Yeah.
at all. I agree with everything you guys are saying. It'll be things that we definitely address when we revisit this cycle, for sure.
Because I also suspect Power School can tell us a lot more than I think I know that can tell us. So there's also that as well, but I appreciate all of this, but I do think like that's gonna be a thing that's gonna really.
No, and I agree because Yeah, and we have to, it's a fine line, right? So you guys are parents. I do struggle potentially when educators don't reach out to students when they're not doing well. But you have Power School where you do have the ability to check it anytime for yourself. And it's, we're gonna have to unpack this and have a greater conversation around, expectations. And I think it is beneficial to kind of look at roles and responsibilities that every stakeholder group has,
Yes.
as part of this conversation
Yes.
that you guys are kind of
And some kids
teeing
check,
up.
some kids check Power School religiously,
Kids
right?
have it.
Yeah.
Because the kids probably.
Anybody
They
can
know
run.
what they're doing, and I think
They're all-
this is a much larger conversation, because the other issue is when are teachers, especially for high school teachers, when are they inputting grades into Power School? And are kids actually knowing what their actual grade is while they can still do something to fix it? That is a huge issue.
We got you.
Okay. Not for the elementary school kids, but for
Please don't look at me.
No. Definitely for the high school kids.
This is all, I mean, it's all good.
Right.
We recognize,
Yeah.
believe me.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, because that Power School is a tricky one. And I think the only other thing is we talked about the IEP, not to forget about the GIEP, because those kids get reports too as well.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's it. Thank you.
This is an FYI. This is what Jenny was talking about, let me be thinking about. My team is responsible for learning and development for our entire organization. We provide a lot of resources to our folks. But what we were noticing when you first launch stuff, everybody's out there, they use it, and then people forget about it. So we have a ongoing yearly communication cadence around all of our resources. So it keeps it fresh for people. New employees know about it because they get it on onboarding, but it keeps the rest of folks reminded of what resources are available for them, what they're for. And sometimes it's in the way of sending things to them with those resources in them, so that they know to access them and what it's for. So that's been very helpful for increasing utilization.
We can build that out through our Office of Communication stuff, what those touch points should be.
For
I know you had
stakeholders.
Dr. Cat, and then I don't know, Mr. Epps.
He does.
Yeah. Mr. Epps, is there a chat? Okay.
Yes, he's provided comment in the chat.
Great, go ahead.
So Mr. F says, a lot of my comments have been raised as soon as I saw in quotes what I can say that I have not said before, end quote. I knew who was presenting, exclamation point. It is a great thing to be known for. I appreciate there is plain language for the metrics, although some are more straightforward than others. I'm also reminded that we have heard there will be, in quotes, multiple measures of success that will inform what it means to meet or exceed standards. Just as we heard in the recent conversations about deeper learning, addressing equity has to be intentional and will manifest in different ways. I appreciate the staged approach and the acknowledgement that the changes proposed today represents where we are as a district. As the multiple measures are identified, common assessments and rubrics developed, continuous improvement structures and professional development offered, we'll be better positioned to communicate progress over time through multiple channels, including reports.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've got.
I just wanted
Oh,
to,
sure.
if I could, I won't take too much time, I'll piggyback on what Mr. Schultz said. Just somebody who had lived this transition as an administrator and a parent in the previous district, I don't want to presume that everything's gonna flow the same way. Every district is different, but I have conversations with other districts who've gone through this, and I just want to say from an elementary standpoint, my experience was the teachers years and years ago did not start with this enthusiasm and excitement because it was such a change, such a shift from I don't even know if it were letters or numbers at the time. So that's a tremendous, tremendous start. But I'm going to tell you what I saw. You mentioned what is the purpose of the report card? It's to report out to the parent. It also helps the teacher. I think we mentioned that, but I don't think we mentioned how well it does. Not that the teacher doesn't know the child, but when you're giving grades, you move on. Now you can go back and reflect. You can go back as that through line, in linked it where these things are going to be aligned. And the most important piece that I saw from this is at an elementary level, you just see reading and math. You don't see what parts of reading and math. This gives that common conversation and conference time at any other time. And that's what I saw as a parent and as an administrator, that will connect the families. It will connect the families to the teacher, and they'll be speaking about the same thing and understanding it and walking away with the clear understanding of where their child is. Because as you know, when they get up there, right, geometry is one little thing under math. When you get to the high school, it's geometry. So you know what their grade is in geometry. When you're looking at the elementary and you get a B or an A and it says math, you don't know what part of math. So this is going to be that common language. And that's what I saw. And I feel with the teacher enthusiasm, the board support, and the parents, it's just going to take off even faster.
Thank you, Dr.
I just make one additional comment that around the reporting out to parents, one of the things we're fortunate to have is a fall report card conference where we meet, where our teachers meet with parents and guardians. And it'll be a perfect face-to-face opportunity to go through the new report card in an appropriate way. We're now talking about your child. And this tells the story of your child today. So I think that is something I didn't highlight adequately enough in the presentation, that we do have fall report card conferences a week before the report card is even issued, as another touchstone for our parents to onboard them to the process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna jump on that too, because we've been talking about caregiver messaging a great deal, and I only have one comment related to caregiver messaging. This is a real opportunity, if it's implemented with fidelity, for educators and caregivers to get a really growth-oriented idea about how their kids are doing. And that's the flip side of this is true as well. If you see a kid who is suddenly not performing as well, it's going to give us a lot of opportunities to identify when that has happened, and also possibly implement additional supports for a kid or find ways that we can work with them more in class so we can get them back on grade level. I think the one challenge I see with this, what has happened with the ABCDEF system is that the DF kind of level of that has been stigmatized in many ways. And what we really need to be careful about when we're messaging out this to our caregivers is that this is literally a measure of how supported the kid is, and also how well they are doing in relationship to what they should be doing in class. And is an opportunity for us to engage in a dialogue around how we can better support this kid as a caregiver, as an educational system, so that we can continue that growth trajectory. And so the only comment I have related to messaging, which is the thing that we, I think, have touched on a great deal here, is that conversation around below approaching meet and exceeds grade level or standard really needs to be focused on not stigmatizing the kids who are below and approaching grade level, and ensuring that our communications are focused on how we are supporting kids in those areas should they receive those specific marks on their report cards. And just wanted to point that out. I think we are all aligned that this is something, an opportunity. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to add to your comment, just the fact that also understanding these are standards for the entire year.
Right.
For the grade. So don't be afraid if first marking period, your kids are approaching the standard, because the whole idea is that by the end of the year that you will have met and or possibly have exceeded the standard. Now, granted, we may have some kids along the continuum who may get somewhere sooner, but I think that's also important in that conversation, that this is the measurement for the entire year of where we expect our kids to be at the end of the year. And, so that's what our.
It's an excellent point. The messaging there will be important. Mr.
And in some ways, it's that conversation is reflective of what we say all the time about CDTs. Is that when, as an administrator, I look at the fall CDT and see red everywhere, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a long year. But then you see the growth over time, the growth measure. So that's important acknowledgement.
And then I have one thing that will likely tee you up for the future, which is a question. I know you talked about, often when you plant flowers in a garden, you're digging in the garden, you're getting dirty and finding other things you need to plant as well. You talked about aligning rubrics, you talked about doing possible trainings and those things. That feels like an additional phase. So I wondered if you could talk about, is that gonna happen concurrently with, doesn't feel like it's happening, it is happening concurrently? Can you talk a little bit more about
The ed office is absolutely coming up with a plan, to address assessments over the summer, to look at the scope and sequence, and, they have in some areas, we already have it done, but in some areas we don't.
Sure.
In the areas that we don't, we are actually bringing teachers together over the summer, so you're gonna see a request for additional money to support for the extra duty pay. But we are absolutely coming together as a team and outlining the areas that we need to do more heavy lifting on, and much of that work will be done during the summer.
We can't release the report without having.
Right. Without having a
Correct.
rubric, you need.
And I don't want to suggest by any stretch by those last few sentences that will conclude the work.
Right.
This kind of work is ongoing. And so while we have the assessments and the scope and sequence, there is going to be a lot more conversations around grading and grading practices because we're asking people to change, and we haven't been doing that systematically. And now we're building the plane and flying it at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting concurrently until we have a systematic structure in place to do all the renewal work in the sequence.
Great, looking forward to it next school year.
Continuous improvements. But that's what I was alluding to with Mr. Schultz's piece. This is our work. So.
Great, so once again, just briefly, congratulations. I know this is a huge lift for you all, especially for it to be so inclusive in such a short period of time. You have moved miracles in educational spaces that I have not seen very often in my educational career, so congratulations on getting this done. And so I'll go to public comments now. If there are any public comments, if they can put their name, where they reside in the township. I don't know if we have any. Dr. Riley, you see?
We have 3 attendees and no questions.
No questions. Most excellent. And seeing no public comments at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.